Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Drumming Evil and with yet another reel-to-reel tape recorder. This time it's a Grundig TK7. This is an old tube-powered reel-to-reel. I think this one was from 1955, so that's pretty damn old. I gave it a little test run earlier. It does power up. The indicator tube, the magic eye tube, is working. Also I hear the motor, and no strange noises or anything. I did notice one wheel starting to turn, the take-up reel. But rewind and forward doesn't seem to work, and it also seems to temporarily shut off when I go from, I think it was this mode to this mode. And I don't know, this knob seems a bit off, rotated off from the right position, so I'm not sure what's up with that either. Yeah, so I think there's some issues with the rubber belts inside, probably, given the age of this thing, and I don't know if those belts have been replaced. Otherwise though, I will say that the casing and everything looks very neat. And of course it's that very old 60s style build. It's very sturdy, seems to be mostly wood and metal. Maybe aluminium, I don't even know. So yeah, let's take this front cover off and see what we find inside. Though, I almost forget to give you guys a little overview of the controls. So obviously this delivery and take-up reel. We have a little counter in top here that doesn't really seem to work. Probably another belt issue. We have a big switch here to set the tape speed, which can be 9.5 centimeters or 19 centimeters per second, which is pretty high, especially for the time, so that's interesting. This is two volume knobs. This bottom knob here is, I believe, the main volume of the output, or maybe it might also be the input actually, I don't know. The little knob in the center here is the on-off switch, and also the playback volume. Actually, I think this one is the playback volume because it's also the on-off switch. We also have this little magic eye indicator tube. Three, I believe these are either input or output modes. I believe this was for the microphone, radio, and gramophone recorder. We have a stop button here, and this is a multiple mode switch, which it goes on stop, rewind, and rewind and forward. Now, rewind and forward has a separate knob here, which seems to freeze when I actually supposed to be able to use it. Now the strange thing is, when I'm supposed to set to play mode, which is supposed to be this mode, it doesn't work either. However, to record mode, I pull this up and then rotate it. Now it's in record mode and I can use it. So it seems to have multiple modes too, so that's a bit confusing, but from what I gathered from the manual, this should be the forward and reverse knob, so not sure what's up with that. Probably not a mechanical issue. There's also a little indicator light here, I believe for the recording mode. And that's pretty much all she wrote. So my camera had to recharge for a bit, so I already had a little peek inside and found the issue with the mechanics, it was actually very simple. This knob was simply wrongly placed back on the assembly. Now everything works fine. I have it plugged in at the moment. Let's turn it on and see how all the mechanics work. I checked the rubber belts, and the rubber belts actually are in pretty good condition, so those have definitely been replaced in the past. And everything seems to work pretty well. So let's turn it on. There we go. Now I don't have any tape in here because I want to show the mechanics first. After I've done that, I'm going to put some tape in there, see if it plays back. And I'll have to fancy myself a microphone so we can also see if it records. It has a built-in speaker. There's, I believe, actually 3 speakers in the bottom here. So it will be interesting to hear what it sounds like. So first of all, let's it's now in idle mode. It's on. I don't know if you can see. No, you cannot see the tubes glowing. That beautiful orange glow. So it's in idle mode now. It's doing nothing. I'm gonna put it in forward and rewind mode, and you'll see things start turning. Interestingly, also the little indicator light starts burning. It's probably to tell you that it's in forward reverse mode before you do anything. Now when I flick this switch here, I'll make it so that my hand doesn't block everything, I hope. There's actually 2 modes. First you switch, you essentially switch it to here, activating this brake here. It's probably to put tension on the tape, and then when you flick it further, it actually starts to rewind. Now the capstan is permanently connected to the take-up reel as to provide reverse pressure as it spins. You can also see that the little counter is working now. I mistakenly believed that this counter was connected to the take-up reel, which it usually is with these machines. But it's actually on the delivery wheel, so that's interesting. So I'm gonna put it in forward now. Let's try to use this hand. And there you go. So you'll notice that there's essentially 2 pinch rollers on here. I'm gonna put it on idle mode temporarily. And essentially this left pinch roller wheel is powered by the motor through the capstan, I believe. And the way these 2 are positioned pretty much determines the forward or rewind modes. They don't really seem to do anything else. Now let's put it in playback mode, and there you go. Now as you can see, this assembly here came forward. Here's the pinch roller, which is now pushed against the capstan, and there's also a little felt here which pushes against the recording and playback head. Now you can see the erase head here. There's also a little felt here. I cleaned these felts too, by the way, because they were pretty dirty. The rest was very clean actually, but the felts were pretty dirty. So now I'm gonna put it in record mode, so I pull this up and then turn it, and you'll see that this little felt now pushes against the erase head to ensure proper contact. Same thing really with the record and playback head felt. And now it's in recording mode. So let's take a look at some interesting things I saw in the mechanics here first. I'm gonna put it back into idle. You can see the mechanics in action once more. And there we go, now it's into idle. Gonna switch it off as well, because I don't want to electrocute myself while we're looking at the components. The first interesting thing I noticed is this rather big ass switch. I kind of expected this to be, you know, just your standard switch assembly. There's a knob attached to the switch and the switch would be here. Actually, this entire assembly moves and you'll see that it will push against this plate here, which again pushes against this contact switch here. I'll do it again. So this is 9.5 centimeters per second and this is 19 centimeters per second. That's very interesting construction. I'm kind of wondering if there's more going on down below in that black darkness of the insides of the machine. You can actually see a tube there. I'm not sure what tube that is. Given the length, I'd say it's a rectifier tube. 84. If I remember correctly, that could be an EL84 rectifier tube, but I'm not sure. So maybe we'll take a look at that later. Another interesting mechanic is this double knob assembly here. As you know, this is the on-off switch. You can also see the magic eye tube booting up there. I think I'll make a separate shot of that later. Turn it off again. Different way. So that is connected to a pot under there. There's two pots under here. One here, one here. Ooh, that gets warm. The second volume knob is actually connected to a little gear. As you can see, that gear rotates the second pot meter, second variable resistor, I should say. So that's an interesting mechanical assembly. Cabin here for the power supply cable. There's actually some text here. Huh. Disco Janssen. Janssen. Interesting. Didn't notice that first. Anyways, there's a little cabin here for the power supply cable. And notice that this is made of cardboard. That's interesting. Can expect them to use at least a bit of plastic for such a thing. I don't know if this maybe was plastic before somebody replaced it with a makeshift cardboard assembly. But yeah, interesting. Wonder why either Grundig or the person who replaced it did that. Well, it's cheap at least. You can barely make it out, but there's a speaker right here. There's also a speaker on the bottom, right over there. I don't think you can really see it without a flashlight. Oh. Let's grab a flashlight. Come on. This thing is really heavy. Let's see if we can... Yeah, there we go. There's the bottom speaker. You can also see a capacitor. Probably a capacitor. And finally there's the other speaker over there. So 3 speakers. There's 3 speakers in this thing. Very interesting. I wonder if this that bottom speaker that's over here, maybe for the bass or something. Anyways, I think we should put some reels on here. Let's hear what it sounds like. So there we go. Let's see. This is the yes. So here we go. I put on the reels I got supplied with this. There's some text in here about second music. first good text, okay, and something undecipherable. So I'm very curious what's on here. So I had a little play already, and there's definitely an issue with the wow and flutter on this thing because it's very inconsistent. So I'm gonna have to look into that. Playback volume seems a bit low too. This big knob here is actually the playback volume. This little knob is indeed the recording volume. So that's interesting. So let's put it on play and hear what it sounds like. It's rather hilarious. So let's put it back on idle again. So as you can hear, there's yeah, it's very inconsistent, and the tape seems to be positioned weirdly in the capstone pinch roller assembly. So I think this needs to be calibrated mechanically. I do want to know what it sounds like on maximum speed. So let's just go. Well, you only live once, as they say. It does sound like a warp drive booting up. Aha! Now that's interesting. Let's put it back on normal speed for this tape. This is obviously recorded at 9.5 centimeters per second. And let's, I'm gonna turn this wheel with my hand a little, because I think the issue is definitely in here. Might try a different take-up reel as well. In fact, I think I'm going to do that. So let's at least test the reverse for a bit. I really don't like how I have to put my hand here, but okay. That's certainly not working well. Let's see. Yep, that's definitely a rubber belt slipping right there. That's interesting. I thought they were pretty okay, the rubber belts, but it seems they're yeah, there's some issues with reversing. Now I will say that the reversing isn't very smooth on this, so might need some, well, manual help. Now I do have some other belts from a different machine which are pretty thick as well. I wonder if they fit on this one and if they're tightly on there. It's one of the Philips machines, so that's something I could try. Otherwise I'll have to look on the special shop here in Holland who sells pretty much replacement belts for any kind of reel-to-reel. So I'll have to look into those. Electronically this thing seems to work okay. The volume is a bit low. I have it on maximum here, so I wonder if that's a tube going bad. Usually when the gain decreases, the tube has a little issue, which should be visible visually due to bluish purplish glow. If it's a vacuum issue, that is. Might also be another issue. Might be that the heating element isn't healthy anymore, that it doesn't heat properly, which prevents electrons from flowing. So that could be an issue. So, but at least it does work, and it seems the playback quality is, besides the extreme wow, seems to be fine. In fact, I think I'm just gonna play it again, and let's see what it sounds like if I help the wheel turn a little bit. Let's hear. Well, I suppose it sounds a bit more okayish, so I'll have to look into that. Okay, well, let's take it apart. See what issue we can find with the wow and flutter. Okay, taking a little look at how the tape is applied to the record and playback head, and as you can see, quite a bit sticks out above the tape. Now usually with reel-to-reel heads, the tape is supposed to be like just above the top bit of the actual magnetic section. So I think the low volume might be because the tape is off center. Now another thing, as you can see here, the tape goes in pretty highly into the take-up reel. Put a different reel on here just to be sure that's not an issue with that little plastic reel over there. So I think this needs to be adjusted, this entire section. Also a nice close-up. So I'm gonna look at the service manual of this thing, if I can find it. Take a look at what the proper settings are mechanically for this thing. And I'm gonna try and set it so this hopefully works better. And we'll also have a better volume hopefully, and probably fix the wow and flutter as well, because if I look at the pinch roller and the capstan, you can see they're not very vertical when you compare them to each other. So this all looks a bit slanted, and so I think that's the main issue mechanically here. And then we'll see if the volume is still proper. If it's not, then I really want to check the tubes for a bit. See 2 tubes here as well. And yeah, and then I think, at least for playback, this thing should work pretty well. So I've hooked up the old lady to my analog mixer for some tests. I will say that the playback quality is very nice. Volume is still low, so maybe I'll have to calibrate that too. I sort of managed to fix the flutter by removing a little ring from under the pinch roller, the capstan pinch roller. It's not perfect yet. I also moved the head a little, so it's a bit better aligned with the actual tape, and that certainly improved the quality somewhat. Recording with this thing, however, is not a possibility right now. Something in the entire input stage is broken. Might be a capacitor. hopefully it is a capacitor and not a tube. So yeah, I want to fix the volume issue. If there is an issue, maybe it just plays at such a low volume, but I can't really imagine with the pretty nice speakers that are in this thing. I think it was around 5 watts, and 5 watts can be pretty loud, and this is nowhere near loud. In fact, if I step away for a few meters, I can barely hear the thing. Yeah, another thing, the belt seems to be slipping for the rewind. Forward it also slips, but it doesn't have that much issues with forward because of course the tape isn't rolled up that much yet, contrary to this tape here. So yeah, I'm gonna open this old lady up, see what's inside, see if I can find any faults there, and hopefully I can fix the recording as well, and hopefully I can make the volume, the playback volume, a bit higher. So yeah, let's open her up. So here we have a look at the insides of the Grundig TK7. Getting the unit out was pretty easy, just 4 screws, and out it lifts. So, well, the first thing you'll probably notice is this big motor here. Now, unlike quite a few other reel-to-reels I've opened up, the capstan is actually directly connected to the axle of this motor. So that's pretty interesting. Then again, this motor is pretty hefty, as you can see, and this what essentially did, it's a static coils, and the magnets are actually on the part that can rotate. So when the motor runs, as you can see, the part that is actually powered, the coils, are static, and therefore this thing probably doesn't need any brushes, which saves a lot in wear, and therefore also the need to eventually replace those brushes. So well, let's see, what else do we got. This was covered by this metal assembly here, and it's surprisingly shielded. It's all RF shielded, which is very nice. Now the electronics are all point-to-point wired, so it's quite messy, and it's pretty hard to figure out, you know, what everything connects to, and but the overall circuitry is very simple. This section here is the amplifier section for the playback and record head, but also the output, such as the speaker output and the line out. This separate section here is an oscillator section for the bias signal, as well as the sine wave for the erase head. You'll see a little transformer here. I believe this would be the output transformer, actually. Yeah, probably. Because under here is the mains power supply transformer. And there's also 2 fuses here, and a mains voltage selector. So if you live in a country that, let's say, uses 115 volts, you can set the selector to 115 volts, so you're sure that this device works properly with your net voltage. So the assembly here to the right, I'll change the camera angle in a second, is actually like a huge switch assembly for the motor speed. It's pretty interesting to look at. Of course, there's the big capacitor here. This is probably the power supply smoothing capacitor. Could that be? In fact, I think I'll say that there's multiple capacitors in there. Probably could be 3 capacitors with a common ground. Well, there's 2 black wires, so it could be 2 capacitors and thus 4 connections, and with separate grounds in a single can. Another thing, to the left here you can see a big rotary switch. It's pretty deep too, probably around this deep, multiple layers, which is the which switches for the idle position, playback position, forward and rewind, and of course recording. I think that would be all you can see from here. You can already see a little tube here. There's 2 more tubes here. And yeah, of course a tube here for the oscillator. So let's change the camera angle to look at that motor switch. So this entire assembly is for the motor speed switch. You can just barely make it out there. This is the actual switch itself, which is also connected to this entire assembly here, which is actually 2 switch bars that move in 2 different directions with a little another assembly here, which I think is another switch. I'm not sure. I removed some of the shielding from those little amplifier tubes, and I noticed this one has rather strange spots on there. It's almost as if like getter material sprayed all over there on the inside. I do see the little cathode heater glow, but yeah, this looks kind of weird. It's a bit hard to see where it comes from. Definitely see some gaps there and there. Probably on this side as well. Yes, gap there, gap there. I don't think this is normal though. So I'm gonna look up some specification of this tube. It's the AF80 something. I have to look this up on the schematic. Because I think there's something wrong with this tube, which could explain a lack of recording ability. The other tubes seem fine, although the second small recording tube does light up quite brightly when it's when I turn the unit on. It's not that bright, so I don't think there's an issue, but I will keep my eye on it. I browsed the web for some details on this tube, and actually this is very normal. It's just some extra getter material, so I don't see anything odd on the tube. But I do have another EF86 made by Philips. This one is made by Tungsram, and I could try switching it out, just to be sure if there's an issue with this one. And yeah, I'm kinda curious to see if it works. But it sounds like this one too, because this one came out of a very similar Philips reel-to-reel one that I took apart to for and tube synthesizer project. So, well, let's try it. So I had a little test run with both the tubes, or well, with the new tube in place, which not sure whether I wanted to say both tubes. And here's the new EF86. Still no difference though. So I think there's definitely issues somewhere else. Now I did notice when moving this switch about that I get hum sometimes and you know, ground connection issues. So I'm gonna have to check the connections of that switch. Maybe there's something wrong there. So let's check that. Okay, this should be in focus. Come on. Yes. Okay, so this should work pretty well. I've used a weird little screwdriver of mine to put the entire assembly a bit upright, so I can run it, as well have access to mainly the PCB area here, and with multi-switch. So actually I think it would be cool to see it in action a bit. Ta-da! It's like curtains opening. Quite pretty. I can see tubes glowing here. And I also hear some noise coming from the speakers, so it's definitely something not in a good mood in this thing. There's the big motor. So let's turn around. See? As you can hear, definitely has some issues. It sounds hilarious though. I can also do a little close-up of the capstan thing here. And you'll hopefully be able to see, maybe if I move this light here, that the tape is in there very oddly. So it's not very nice. And here in the back you can see the motor as it runs. Quite impressive to see that motor. I think it definitely is a big part of the weight of this entire thing. Of course, besides this huge thick assembly. And little tubes again, little valves. There's one in the back. It's a bit hard to see, but I'll try without electrocuting myself. There it is. So yeah, that's the unit so far. Still no recording though. So yeah, I think I'm just gonna put the old tube back. It seems fine. I didn't see any weirdness, so, and yeah, nothing changed by replacing it, so the tube is definitely not the issue. It's probably a bad capacitor. The quest continues. Okay, so I'm a bit of an idiot when testing this. I totally forgot to check the connection on my little improvised plug. because the actual connection, when plugged in and fused from this side, is actually on the right side, not on the left side where I have connected it. Now I use this plug for my Philips recorders, so it's not like I soldered this wrong. I simply, you know, thought it would be the same thing, but you can see that. But yeah, I'll have to switch this around, or I could actually bridge these two plugs. That could work. That should make them compatible with both machines as well, because the Philips just works in stereo, so it takes from either channel, but this is mono, so yeah. No, and that's what I'll do. See, I really hope that that was just the issue, me being an idiot, and the machine actually works fine when recording, so let's find out.
Just turns out I'm an idiot. So now it does record. That's great. Well, the recording volume is still very low, but oh well. At least we got something now.